Good evening to everybody. I'm Carolina Fabbri, and I'm a PhD student from the University of Florence from the Department of Agri-Food Production and Environmental Sciences. I'm here to show you the topic of my of this script, that is nitrogen, how the nitrogen is managed in agriculture. What is important is that nitrogen is an essential element for the growth of the plants. In fact, nitrogen is important for the vegetative stages, and it is a part of many components of the plant, for example chlorophyll and nucleic acids, proteins, and an absence of chlorophyll will showing a yellowing firstly of the older leaves of the plant, and a problem in the growth of the crop. So it is important to give the nitrogen in the right time and in the right rate. And what is essential is to know that nitrogen is influenced by the temperature and by the presence of water in the soil. In fact, the main processes that are at the base of the nitrogen cycle are nitrogen fixation and, for example, mineralization and nitrification that increase crop available nitrogen. Otherwise, the nitrification, volatilization, immobilization, and leaching are processes that lead to a loss of nitrogen, permanent or temporary. For the leaching is the loss of nitrogen into the soil, in the underwater, and it is an important factor for the environmental pollution. It is known that in the agricultural system there are many losses of nitrogen by leaching. It is known that they are like 55 kg nitrogen a year in a global scale. Also with the volatilization and other processes, there are the loss of nitrogen. For example, with the volatilization and with the nitrification, there are losses of nitrogen in the air, like nitrodoxys emissions. That is a powerful greenhouse gas, and it is maybe the most powerful with CO2, because it is it is at the base of the depletion of stratospheric ozone problem. So, and it can remain into the air for about 100 of years. So it is a huge problem. The other processes like mineralization or nitrification also influence the presence of nitrogen into the soil. In fact, with the mineralization, organic nitrogen is converted to inorganic nitrogen, ammonium, and it is influenced by the temperature and the moisture of the soil, so by the presence of the water into the soil. In fact, with a warm soil there is more mineralization, and with aerobic condition. Otherwise, the nitrification is influenced more by anaerobic condition, so I think that influence the nitrification is the presence of water in the soil, so the water-filled porous space are full empty of the water, so the nitrification is increased by this process. What about the nitrification influence more the nitric oxide emissions into the air? But the bacteria activity is very influenced by the temperature. In fact, it is known that the range between the bacteria, the range between bacteria works well is from 30 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but from 0 to 50 the increase is the activity is slow, and it increases during the time. Low temperature, slow of substance organic in the soil. So the decomposition of the organic matter in the soil is low. And mineralization is also influenced by temperature, because chemical and enzymatic reaction depends on the temperature. The problem of climate change is very close to the problem to the nitrogen cycle, because the nitrogen is, like we said, is strongly influenced by the climate in general. So the rain, the temperature, and other the precipitation and other things can influence the presence of nitrogen, not only in the soil but also in the air and in the underground part. In fact, the problem of climate change is that the climate is going to increase. In fact, some studies shows that the increase in temperature passes from 1 degrees to 4 degrees. It is a cycle, because it changes the nitrogen cycle, and the nitrogen cycle, the presence of nitrogen into the soil also influences the climate change. The nitrogen is very used by the human activity in the last few years. In fact, the nitrogen, the anthropic nitrogen in the ground was very abused in the past, and now there are this type of repercussions in the air and in the ground. What we can study in front of the use of nitrogen is an indicator, that is the nitrogen use efficiency. That is an indicator that tell us how is used, how the nitrogen is used, and his presence in the soil, or how the crop use the nitrogen. In fact, it is an indicator that is based on the mass balance principle, and it can be calculated in many different ways. A way can be on the base of the nitrogen present on the final yield of the crop, in front of the nitrogen present at the beginning, at the time of the fertilization. So it is a good indicator that can be used in agriculture. There are many strategies that can be used for managing nitrogen in the best way. For example, using the crops, some crops like leguminous that can fix the nitrogen in the soil with bacteria activity that form some nodules, and then this nitrogen can be used during the winter time by the second crop. But more interesting for me, because it is my at the base of my PhD program, it is my topic, is the use of precision farming techniques that are instruments that can be put over the canopy crop, and they give an index to study the healthy of the crop. For example, a very used index is the NDVI, that is measured by both active or passive spectroradiometers, and these normalizate different vegetation index is an index that range from 0 to 1, like Lucas said, and it is very low when the plant, the crop has problem that is not related absolutely to the presence of nitrogen, but also to the water presence or other diseases of the plant. And there are also other instruments like the passive instrument, or for example, like we said in this picture, the chlorophyll meters that can be an indicator of the presence of chlorophyll inside of the crop. And so if you have a night level of the index, you know that the plant, the crop is healthy, and you don't need to give other nitrogen with the fertilization. So in front of climate change, it's important to use these kind of instruments to give the right rate of nitrogen in the right time, and to prevent, like a prevention of the problems that I explained before. So to give a more sustainability to the agricultural process in the future. So it's what I thought about.